A wedding she never wanted to attend. The ballroom sparkled like something from a fairy tale. Hundreds of white roses cascaded from crystal vases, their petals scattered artfully across silk tablecloths. The chandeliers overhead cast a warm amber glow that made everything look expensive and perfect. Juliet Morrison stood near the champagne fountain, watching her younger sister Grace twirl across the dance floor in a dress that probably cost more than Juliet's car. She should have been happy. Grace looked radiant, her new husband adored her, and the whole event was flawless. But standing there in her navy bridesmaid dress, clutching a glass of champagne she barely touched, Juliet felt like an outsider at her own sister's wedding. My goodness, you came alone again. The voice cut through her thoughts like a knife through butter. Mrs. Helen Bradford, her mother's oldest friend, appeared beside her with that particular smile that wealthy women use when they pity you. I was just telling your mother how concerning it is. Juliet forced her professional smile, the one she used in courtrooms when opposing counsel tried to rattle her. I've been busy with a major case, Mrs. Bradford. Corporate law doesn't leave much time for dating. Oh, sweetheart. Helen touched her arm with perfectly manicured fingers. You're what now? 32? 31, Juliet corrected, feeling her jaw tighten. Well, time waits for no woman, dear. Your sister is younger and already married. You really should lower your standards a bit. Not every woman can afford to be picky forever. Sometimes good enough is exactly that. Good enough. The word stung more than Juliet wanted to admit. She had spent the last 7 years building her career, working 70-hour weeks, fighting for every promotion and every case. She had just made senior associate at one of Boston's most prestigious law firms. But apparently, none of that mattered, because she didn't have a ring on her finger. The unexpected guest before Juliet could respond. A commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. The music seemed to soften, and conversations dropped to whispers. A man walked into the ballroom with the kind of confidence that suggested he owned the place, which Juliet realized with a sinking feeling. He actually did Dominic Ashford. Even she recognized him, despite her deliberate avoidance of society pages and business gossip. 36 years old, tech genius, self-made billionaire, and owner of this 5-star hotel where Grace had insisted on having her wedding. He moved through the crowd like a shark through water, effortlessly commanding attention without seeming to try. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair styled perfectly and gray eyes that seemed to calculate the worth of everything they landed on. His custom suit probably cost more than Juliet made in a month. Everything about him screamed power, wealth, the kind of arrogance that came from never being told no. Grace practically bounced over to him, her face lighting up with genuine surprise. Dominic, I didn't think you would make it. Couldn't miss it. His voice was deep, smooth, the kind that probably made boardrooms go silent. He handed her an envelope that undoubtedly contained a check with too many zeros. Your husband and I go way back. College roommates before I dropped out to build my company. Grace's husband, Robert, joined them with a slightly strained smile. This guy was too busy changing the world to finish his degree. Some of us had to actually work for our success. Some of us still do, Dominic replied with a slight smirk. The difference is scale. The collision course Juliet watched the exchange with growing distaste. She had dealt with men like Dominic before in her career. Powerful, wealthy, convinced that money could solve any problem and buy any solution. They treated people like chess pieces and never considered that their actions might have real consequences for others. That's the problem with inherited wealth, she muttered, just loud enough that she thought only Mrs. Bradford could hear. Easy to be successful when you start at the finish line. But the ballroom acoustics had other plans. Her voice carried farther than intended, and several heads turned, including Dominic's. Those gray eyes locked onto her with laser focus. For a moment, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then he started walking toward her, his expression unreadable but his intent clear. He was coming to address her comment directly. Juliet's mother materialized at her elbow, fingers digging into her arm hard enough to leave marks. That's my daughter Juliet, Patricia Morrison said with a forced laugh. She works far too much and forgets her manners. Please excuse her. I said what I said, Juliet replied, meeting Dominic's approach with her chin raised. She had faced down hostile witnesses and aggressive opposing counsel. She wasn't about to back down from some billionaire with an ego problem. Dominic stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Not because of his height or his obvious physical fitness, but because of the intelligence that radiated from him. This was a man who saw through people, who calculated angles and outcomes 3 steps ahead. He must be the sister Grace mentioned, he said, his tone carefully neutral. The one who's married to her career because no man can meet her impossible standards? The words hit like a slap. Around them, conversations had stopped entirely. 200 guests watched the confrontation unfold like it was dinner theater. Juliet felt her cheeks burn, felt the weight of every judgmental stare, every pitying look. The point of no return, something inside, Juliet snapped. Maybe it was the stress of the past months, the impossible hours, the constant pressure to be perfect in every aspect of her life. Maybe it was the years of being compared to her younger sister, of being found lacking because she chose career over family. Or maybe it was just the sheer audacity of this man, this stranger, who knew nothing about her but felt entitled to judge. Her hand moved before her brain could stop it. The champagne glass she'd been holding tilted forward, and suddenly the expensive golden liquid was cascading down the front of Dominic. Ashford's $1,000 suit. The silence that followed was deafening. Grace gasped. Patricia Morrison looked like she might faint. Mrs. Bradford actually took a step backward, as if disaster might be contagious. And Dominic stood perfectly still, champagne dripping from his jacket, his expression transforming from surprise to something far more dangerous. You just made a very expensive mistake, he said quietly, his voice so low only Juliet could hear. But there was steel in those words, a promise of consequences that made her stomach drop. Then sue me, Juliet shot back, even as her hands started to shake. I'm sure someone with your resources can afford good lawyers. His smile was cold, calculated, and absolutely terrifying. Lawyers won't be necessary. But Miss Morrison, I promise you will regret this moment. That little display just cost you more than you can possibly imagine. He turned and walked toward the exit with the same confidence he had entered with, leaving a trail of whispered conversations and shocked faces. At the door, he paused and looked back, catching Juliet's eye one more time. Enjoy the rest of the wedding, he said, loud enough for the room to hear. It's the last peaceful moment you'll have for quite some time. Then he was gone. And Juliet was left standing in the middle of her sister's wedding reception, champagne glass still in her trembling hand. With absolutely no idea what storm she had just unleashed, Grace's voice cut through the shock. Juliet, what have you done? That was exactly what Juliet was wondering, and she had a terrible feeling she was about to find out. Waking up to a nightmare, Juliet's phone wouldn't stop ringing. The sound drilled into her skull like a jackhammer, pulling her from the kind of sleep that comes after too much champagne and too much regret. She reached for the device on her nightstand, squinting at the bright screen through eyes that felt like sandpaper. 40-7 missed calls. 83 text messages. Her social media notifications had exploded into the hundreds. Something was very, very wrong. The first call she answered was from her best friend, Rebecca. Tell me you've seen it, Rebecca said without preamble. Please tell me you already know. Know what? Juliet sat up, her head pounding in protest. Rebecca, it's 7 in the morning on a Sunday. What could possibly be this urgent? Check any news site. Anyone at all. I'll wait. With growing dread, Juliet opened her laptop. The headlines loaded slowly. Each one worse than the last, Dominic Ashford announces. Surprise engagement to mystery. Woman. Billionaire tech mogul. Off the market. Meet his fiancée, Juliet Morrison. Love. At first sight, how a wedding sparked an unexpected romance. Juliet's vision blurred. This couldn't be happening. This was insane. She scrolled frantically through article after article, each one featuring the same carefully edited photo from last night. In the image, she stood close to Dominic, her hand raised toward his face. But the angle made it look intimate, tender. like she was caressing his cheek rather than about to dump champagne on him. The articles painted a fairy tale. Star-crossed lovers meeting at a wedding. Instant chemistry. A whirlwind romance culminating in an engagement announcement. Dominic was quoted extensively, talking about how he had been captivated by her intelligence. Her fire, her unwillingness to be impressed by his wealth. "This is revenge," Juliet whispered into the phone. "He's destroying my life because I embarrassed him." "What are you going to do?" Rebecca asked. Before Juliet could answer, her phone buzzed with a new text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. My office. 9 a.m. Don't be late." The address is already on every news site in America. Was signed simply, D. Inside the Lion's Den, the Ashford Tower dominated Boston's skyline, a gleaming monument to technological innovation and obscene wealth. Juliet stood in the lobby at 8:45, dressed in her best courtroom suit like armor. Trying to project confidence she absolutely did not feel. Security waved her through without question. They had been expecting her. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like ascending to an execution. When the doors opened directly into Dominic's penthouse office, her breath caught, despite her determination to remain unimpressed, floor-tisseling. Windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The space was all clean lines, expensive artwork, and furniture that probably cost more than her law school tuition. And there, standing with his back to her, looking out at the city he helped build, was Dominic Ashford. He turned as she entered, and she was struck again by how commanding his presence was. He had changed from last night's champagne-soaked suit into perfectly tailored charcoal gray. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes tracked her every movement like a predator watching prey. "Miss Morrison. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice?" Juliet kept her voice steady through sheer force of will. "You've made sure the entire world thinks we're engaged. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. My boss called me at 6 this morning. Even my father, who I haven't spoken to in 2 years, sent a text asking if I've lost my mind. Sit down." It wasn't a request. Juliet remained standing. "I'd rather not. Just tell me what this is really about so I can figure out how to fix it." Dominic's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Fix it, Juliet. This isn't a problem to be solved. It's an opportunity to be leveraged. For both of us. It's the only thing I want to leverage is a lawsuit for defamation and emotional distress. You're welcome to try." He moved to his desk, picked up a folder, and handed it to her. "But first, read this. Your lawyer brain might find it interesting." The folder contained a contract. Juliet's eyes scanned the pages, her legal training kicking in automatically. What she read made her blood run cold. "You want me to pretend to be your fiancé for 6 months?" she said slowly. "Appear at events, live in your penthouse, convince the world we're madly in love. In exchange, you'll pay me monthly compensation and a final sum of $8 million. $8 million was my opening offer. I'm open to negotiation. This is blackmail. This is a business arrangement." Dominic leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "I need to appear stable and settled. My board of directors and major investors are concerned about my image. Too many tabloid headlines about different women, too much focus on my personal life instead of the company. A serious relationship solves that problem. Hire an actress. Better yet, find someone who actually wants to be with you. But you're perfect." His voice took on an edge. "You're intelligent, accomplished, and you have no interest in my money or status. You proved that spectacularly last night. More importantly, you need what I'm offering." The trap closes. Juliet's hands clenched on the folder. "I don't need anything from you, really." Dominic pulled out his phone and started scrolling. "Let me read you some interesting information I gathered this morning. Your law firm is currently being courted by Ashford Technologies for a major contract worth approximately $15 million per year. The senior partners are very eager to secure this deal. It would make careers, including potentially yours." Her stomach dropped. "You wouldn't." "I already did." "I called the managing partner at 6:30 this morning. Expressed my concerns about your judgment and professionalism. Mentioned that I was reconsidering the contract given that one of their senior associates attacked me at a social function."
"How?"
"I didn't attack you. I spilled champagne." "Semantics. The point is, your bosses are now questioning whether you're a liability. They're wondering if keeping you is worth losing a $15 million annual contract. Juliet felt the walls closing in. She had worked 7 years to get where she was. Sacrificed relationships, health, any semblance of work-life balance. And this man could destroy it all with a phone call. "You're despicable," she whispered. "I'm practical." Dominic set down his phone. "Here's what happens next. You can refuse this arrangement, issue a statement denying the engagement, and watch your career implode. I'll make sure every firm in Boston knows you're toxic. Your professional reputation will be in ruins before lunch. Or you accept my offer. 6 months of occasional public appearances. You'll have your own space in the penthouse, your own life. All I need is for you to smile for cameras and convince people we're in love. After 6 months, we announce an amicable separation. You walk away with $8 million in connections that will open doors you never dreamed possible." $10 million, Juliet heard herself say. "If I'm selling 6 months of my life, I want 10 million. Something flickered in Dominic's eyes. Respect, maybe. Or amusement.
9 million.
Final offer. Deal, but I have conditions. Of course you do. Juliet pulled out her phone and started typing. First, you don't interfere with my work at the firm without my explicit approval. Second, when this ends, you make it clear the breakup was mutual and you have nothing but respect for me. Third, everything about our private interactions remains confidential. And fourth, no physical intimacy beyond what's necessary for public appearances. Agreed to all of it. Dominic pushed off from the desk and extended his hand. Do we have a deal, counselor? Juliet stared at that outstretched hand, knowing that taking it would change everything. But what choice did she have? He had backed her into a corner with the precision of a chess master. She was good at her job, but he operated on an entirely different level. She shook his hand. His grip was warm, firm, and lasted a fraction longer than necessary. Welcome to the engagement, Juliet. I think this is going to be far more interesting than either of us anticipated. The new reality by noon, Juliet's belongings were being packed by a team of professional movers Dominic had hired. By 2 p.m., she was standing in the penthouse that would be her home for the next 6 months, surrounded by luxury she could never afford, feeling completely out of place. Her new bedroom was bigger than her entire apartment had been. The closet alone could fit her old living room. Through the windows, Boston spread out below like a toy city. Somewhere down there was her old life getting smaller by the minute. Dominic appeared in the doorway. He had changed into casual clothes, jeans, and a black sweater that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. The stylist will be here at 4 to go through your wardrobe. We have a charity dinner tonight. Our first official appearance as a couple, tonight? Juliet turned to face him. I just agreed to this 2 hours ago. The world already thinks we're engaged. Waiting would look suspicious. He studied her with those calculating gray eyes. You're going to need to work on looking less like you want to murder me. Give me time. I'm still processing that my life has turned into a reality show. Not a reality show. A performance. And you're a smart woman, Juliet. You'll learn the role quickly. He started to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I am sorry about what I said last night. That comment about your standards was cruel and unnecessary. You didn't deserve it. The apology caught her off guard. She had expected arrogance, maybe gloating, but not genuine remorse. Why did you say it then? Because I was performing too. Playing the role everyone expects from Dominic Ashford, his expression softened slightly. Turns out we both wear masks. Maybe that's why this arrangement will work. He left before she could respond, and Juliet was alone in her gilded cage, wondering what exactly she had gotten herself into and whether $9 million would be enough compensation for the next 6 months. Outside the window, the city glittered in the afternoon sun, beautiful and indifferent. Somewhere down there, her sister was on her honeymoon. Her mother was probably having a breakdown, and the entire world thought Juliet Morrison had just landed the catch of the century if only they knew the truth. Learning to play the part, 3 months passed in a blur of camera. Flashes and carefully choreographed moments. Juliet learned to smile on command, to laugh at appropriate times, to lean into Dominic's touch when photographers appeared. She learned which designers he preferred, which charities mattered to his business interests, which questions from reporters to deflect and which to answer. She also learned that Dominic Ashford was not the person she had assumed he was. Behind closed doors, away from the public eye, he was different, quieter, more thoughtful. He worked brutal hours, often up until 2 or 3 in the morning, driven by something deeper than ambition. He had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, and occasionally in unguarded moments. She saw something in his expression that looked almost like loneliness. Their routine had settled into something almost comfortable. Coffee together in the morning, casual conversation about work and current events, separate days, separate lives. Then evenings, where they would sometimes find themselves in the same room, not because the contract required it, but because the penthouse felt less empty with another person there. It was dangerous, this comfort. Juliet reminded herself constantly that this was temporary, that Dominic was still the man who had blackmailed her into this arrangement. But the reminders were getting harder to believe. The cooking lesson on a Saturday morning. Their designated day off from public appearances, Juliet woke to the smell of smoke. She ran to the kitchen and found Dominic staring in confusion at a pan that contained what might once have been eggs, but now resembled a science experiment gone wrong. "What are you doing?" she asked, trying not to laugh. "Attempting breakfast." He looked at the pan with genuine bewilderment. The recipe said it was simple. "When was the last time you cooked anything?" "Honestly? College, maybe. I usually just order in or eat at restaurants." Juliet shook her head and took the pan from him. "That's depressing. Cooking is one of life's basic pleasures. So is not burning down buildings." She did laugh then, surprised by the self-deprecating humor. "Okay, step back. I'll teach you, but you have to actually listen to my instructions." "I'm terrible at following instructions, I've noticed." "Try anyway." What followed was an hour of controlled chaos. Dominic proved to be an enthusiastic but disaster-prone student. He cracked eggs with too much force, sending shell fragments everywhere. He burned toast, while somehow leaving the middle frozen. He managed to get flour in his hair despite the recipe calling for no flour. But he was also funny. He made jokes about his incompetence, asked genuine questions, and looked ridiculously pleased when he finally managed to flip a pancake without it landing on the floor. "This is actually enjoyable," he admitted, watching Juliet demonstrate proper whisking technique. "I can't remember the last time I did something this normal." "Normal is underrated," Juliet replied, then realized how close they were standing. When had that happened? She had moved to guide his hands on the whisk, and suddenly they were inches apart, and the kitchen felt very small. Dominic seemed to realize it too. His gray eyes met hers, and something shifted in the air between them. Something that had nothing to do with contracts or arrangements. "Juliet," he said quietly, "this is going to sound insane, but I need to tell you something." "What?" "I'm not sure this is fake anymore. At least, not for me." Her heart stopped, then started again, beating too fast. "Dominic, don't. We have an agreement. Clear boundaries. This is business." "Is it?" He set down the whisk, giving her his full attention. "When I come home and you're here, I'm relieved. When we talk, I actually listen instead of just waiting for my turn to speak. When you laugh at something I said, it feels like winning. Those aren't business feelings, Juliet. You're confusing proximity with connection," she said, even as her own feelings churned inside her chest. "We're playing roles. We've just gotten good at it. Look me in the eye and tell me you feel nothing." She couldn't, because somewhere between the public appearances and private dinners, between the heated arguments and surprising laughter, she had started to care. She looked forward to seeing him. She noticed when he was stressed or tired. She found herself wanting to share random thoughts and funny stories with him. She had stopped counting down the days until their contract ended. "What I feel doesn't matter," she finally said. "You blackmailed me into this arrangement, Dominic. Everything we have is built on coercion. That's not a foundation for anything real. It's expression hardened." You're right. I did blackmail you. That was wrong, and I can't take it back. But I can tell you that I regret it. Every day, I regret it. Because now I have you here, and you look at me like I'm the villain in your story, and maybe I am. Then why are we having this conversation? Because in 3 months, our contract ends. You walk away with your money, I maintain my reputation, and we never see each other again. And the thought of that is unbearable. The family confrontation before Juliet could respond, her phone rang. It was Grace calling for the first time since the engagement announcement. Juliet excused herself and answered in her bedroom, grateful for the interruption even as she dreaded the conversation. We need to talk, Grace said without greeting. Mom told me some concerning things. About what? About you and Dominic? About how this whole thing started. Juliet, is this engagement even real? The question hung in the air. Juliet had become so practiced at lying that the truth felt foreign on her tongue. It's complicated, that's not an answer. Grace's voice sharpened. Did he force you into this somehow? Because Robert has been telling me stories about how ruthless Dominic can be in business. How he destroys anyone who gets in his way. Grace, I'm an adult. I made my own choices. Choices or calculations. You've always been the smart one, the practical one. This fairy tale romance doesn't fit you. And the fact that it started right after you humiliated him at my wedding seems suspicious. Juliet closed her eyes. Her sister wasn't stupid. What do you want me to say? The truth. For once in your life, stop being the perfect daughter, the perfect lawyer, the perfect whatever, and just tell me the truth. Are you happy? The question pierced through all of Juliet's defenses. Was she happy? 3 months ago, the answer would have been a clear no. But now, standing in a penthouse that had started to feel like home, having just laughed herself silly while teaching a billionaire to make pancakes, having just heard him admit to feelings that echoed her own confused emotions, I don't know, she whispered. I honestly don't know anymore. Then figure it out. Because whatever this is, it's real enough to change you. I can hear it in your voice. Just make sure you're changing into someone you actually want to be. After Grace hung up, Juliet sat on her bed for a long time, thinking. Everything had become tangled. The lies had layers upon layers. She had started this hating Dominic, seeing him as her captor. But somewhere along the way, she had started seeing him as human. Flawed, complicated, and surprisingly vulnerable. And now he was asking for something real, and she had no idea what to do with that. The moment of truth that evening, they attended a gala for childhood literacy. Another performance, another night of smiling for cameras, but this time, when Dominic took her hand, it felt different. When he looked at her, she saw the question in his eyes, the hope. During the dinner, a woman approached their table. She was elegant, probably in her 50s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. Dominic, darling, it's wonderful to see you looking so happy. She turned to Juliet. You must be the remarkable woman who finally captured his heart. I'm Jennifer Wallace, an old friend of his mother's. It's lovely to meet you, Juliet replied automatically. His mother would have adored you, Jennifer continued. She always worried that Dominic was too focused on work, too isolated. She wanted him to find someone who could see past the money and the success to the person underneath. I didn't know. His mother passed away, Juliet said quietly, glancing at Dominic. His expression had shuddered. 5 years ago, cancer. I'm so sorry. She was an amazing woman, Jennifer said. She raised Dominic alone after his father left. Worked 3 jobs to put him through school. Everything he built partially in her memory. After Jennifer left, Juliet turned to Dominic. You never told me about your mother. You never asked. But there was no accusation in his voice, just statement of fact. Everyone assumes I inherited money or had some easy path. The truth is, my mom cleaned houses and waited tables so I could go to decent schools. When I made my first million, she cried. When I made my first billion, she was already gone. Is that why you work so hard? Why you built all this? Partially. And partially because when you grow up with nothing, you're always afraid of going back to nothing. Even when logic says you're secure, the fear doesn't go away. Juliet understood then. The drive, the control, the need to dominate every situation. It wasn't arrogance. It was armor. It's like her perfectionism was armor against feeling inadequate. "I'm sorry I judged you," she said softly. "That first night, I assumed you were just another privileged billionaire. I didn't know your story. You weren't entirely wrong. I did leverage my power against you. That was privileged behavior, even if I came from nothing originally." They danced later, moving together with the practiced ease of 3 months of public appearances. But this time, when Dominic pulled her close, Juliet didn't resist. She let herself lean into him, let herself feel the warmth of his hand on her back, the solidness of his presence. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "I don't know how to untangle what's real from what we've been pretending. And let's stop pretending. Let's see what's left when the performance ends. You still have 3 months on the contract. Forget the contract." He looked down at her, and his eyes held something raw and honest. "I'll tear it up tomorrow. You can leave with the full payment, no strings attached. Or you can stay, not because you have to, but because you want to. Your choice. Always your choice." The choice that night, back in the penthouse, Juliet stood at the window, looking out at the city. Behind her, she heard Dominic enter the living room, but she didn't turn around. "I hated you," she said into the silence. "When this started, I hated everything about you. The blackmail, the control, the way you just assumed you could buy whatever you wanted, including me. I know. But somewhere along the way, that changed. You changed. Or maybe I just finally saw the real you instead of the mask you wear for the world." "Juliet, let me finish." She turned to face him. "I spent my whole life being the responsible one, the one who made smart choices and planned everything perfectly. And then you came along and destroyed all my plans, and I was furious. But maybe I needed my plans destroyed. Maybe I was so busy being perfect that I forgot to actually live. What are you saying?" "I'm saying I choose to stay. Not because of the money, not because of the contract. Because when I imagine walking away and never seeing you again, I can't breathe. Because you drive me crazy, but you also make me laugh. Because you see me, really see me. Not just the lawyer or the perfect daughter, but the person underneath." Dominic crossed the room in 3 strides. He stopped just inches away, close enough to touch, but waiting for permission. "I need to hear you say it clearly," he said. "No more games, no more performance. What do you want?" Juliet reached up and touched his face. It's the same gesture that had started this whole mess 3 months ago, but gentle this time. "Real. I want this to be real. I want us to be real. I want to see where this goes when we're not pretending." He kissed her then, and it was nothing like the careful public kisses they had shared for cameras. It was honest and desperate and full of 3 months of suppressed feelings. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Juliet felt like the world had shifted on its axis. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we start over. Hi, I'm Dominic Ashford. I'm terrible at cooking, I work too much, and I just fell completely in love with a woman who dumped champagne on me at a wedding." Juliet laughed, the sound bright and genuine. I'm Juliet Morrison. I'm controlling, I have trust issues, and I just realized I'm in love with the most infuriating man I've ever met. I think we can make this work, honestly. I have no idea. But I'm willing to try if you are." "Deal." He pulled her close again. "No contract this time. Just us figuring it out as we go." Outside the windows, the city lights sparkled like scattered diamonds. Somewhere down there, people were living their normal lives, completely unaware that in a penthouse high above, 2 people who had started as enemies were choosing to become something more. The next morning, Dominic held a press conference. He announced that the engagement was real, that he had found something far more valuable than any business deal. Spoke about Juliet with genuine warmth, and for the first time in his public life, he wasn't performing. Juliet watched from the sidelines, her heart full. They had a long way to go. Trust to rebuild, patterns to break, families to convince that this wasn't just some elaborate scheme. But for the first time in months, maybe in years, she felt genuinely hopeful. Grace called later that day. "So it's real now," "Yeah," Juliet said, unable to keep the smile out of her voice. "It's real. Good, because you sound happy." "Finally, and Juliet, for what it's worth, I think you two might actually work. You're both stubborn enough to make it through anything." 6 months after that night at the wedding, Juliet and Dominic stood in the same ballroom where it had all begun. But this time, it was their wedding. Small, intimate, just family and close friends. No performance, no pretense as they exchanged vows. Juliet thought about the journey that had brought them here. The anger, the mistakes, the gradual transformation from enemies to partners. It hadn't been a fairy tale. It had been messy and complicated and real. When Dominic kissed her, she heard Grace cheering and her mother crying happy tears and Rebecca whistling. But mostly, she felt the solid truth of the moment. This was real. They were real. And whatever came next, they would face it together. Sometimes, she would later tell people, the best love stories start with champagne and chaos. You just have to be brave enough to see past the mess, to the possibilities underneath. And she and Dominic had been brave enough.